And we're back, just like the Five Musketeers.
Three Musketeers, isn't it? Well, nobody knows how many there were, really, do they?
You know that the Three Musketeers is a fiction, right? Written by Alexander Dumas.
A lot of people are saying that about the Bible these days.
What, that it was written by Alexander Dumas?
Don't be daft, Steve. It was written by Jesus.
Are we there yet?
Let's do this!
What's your favourite ice cream, listeners? Us at Screen Hogs, we like cornettos, and a certain trilogy of cornettos, if you get my drift.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Gardner, because we are here today to review The World's End, the third and final chapter of the Cornetto trilogy brought to us by Edgar Wright and his two regular, well, what would you say, cohorts?
Collaborators, I guess.
Collaborators, I suppose, yeah. Simon Pegg and, of course, Mr. Nick Frost as well.
Absolutely, and let's just fill anyone who's in a bit of doubt of what we're talking about in on some past history. Basically, these three personalities came together in kind of late 90s, 99.
Jesus,
and
was it that long ago?
It's really weird to think, but...
I still think of the 90s as being like 3 years ago, and
yeah.
I certainly still think of the 80s as being only 20 years ago.
I remember those good times.
Certainly not these days. I mean, goddamn, like the 80s is like 30 years ago, and the 90s is, well, 20 years ago, technically.
It's crazy to think that. But there was a TV series on Channel 4 called Spaced. Not a big hit, but a very strong cult hit. And
it's got a very strong cult following. Even a little bit in America, I think it's got a slight following as well. Probably a lesser degree over there than over here, but it still has got a kind of very strong... I think it's safe to say it's got a strong internet presence.
Yeah, oh, definitely so. I mean, it's one of these programs that it's just born to be a kind of cult program. And basically, after the second series of that, they made their first feature film with the three of them, called Shaun of the Dead, and that really was a hit. I mean,
oh yeah, it did really well, and again, that did very well in America as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and that, and it's said to be the zombie film that George A. Romero was trying to make for 30 years. Kind of the mix of satire and real gore elements. I mean, that's not my words. That's actually George A. Romero's words himself. When he saw the film, he was like,
I can kind of see why, because while I think his films are generally more straightforward, like a straight horror than Shaun of the Dead ever intended to be, it certainly does pack in all the kind of social commentary that his zombie films always attempted to do. And also, it's probably more successful than a lot of his zombie films in that respect.
Yeah, I guess so. And a lot of the kind of... I mean, obviously they play it for laughs in Shaun of the Dead, but you know, there is a sly humour like underlining a lot of George A. Romero's stuff as well. But yeah, basically it propelled all three of them into the big leagues. So
yeah, definitely.
I mean, big respect from not just reviewers and kind of fans, but also with their peers. You know, a lot of respect from, like Quentin Tarantino once said, like Nick Frost is the most funniest man in the world ever. I
really like Nick Frost, and I feel that he's probably he's overshadowed by Simon Pegg quite a lot.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Nick Frost's kind of relationship with Simon Pegg, basically, Simon Pegg was this guy who went to who studied kind of dramatics at university, and then he got on board the kind of comedy circuit, worked with like Steve Coogan, doing kind of bit parts in early like No Me, No One You. So he was always kind of like a rise in comedy name during the 90s. But Nick Frost has been his best friend for like since childhood, and he was actually a waiter throughout all those years.
Didn't they live like in a bedsit together and share a double bed?
They shared a bed. Yeah.
And Nick Frost is really, as you say, he's just Simon Pegg's mate, and Simon Pegg was always the aspiring actor.
Absolutely, and in when they started Spaced, I mean, Nick Frost didn't want. They wrote this character for him, and he said, "No, I can't act. I can't play this." Simon Pegg eventually kind of like forced him with a knife, said, "You've got to play this role, or I'll kind of like cut you." I mean, I don't know if he's probably just joking on. You'd hope.
We'll never know.
We'll never know. Could have been Simon Pegg in prison, notorious killer. But yeah. So you're right. He kind of gets a bit pushed to the side, but I mean, but saying that, he's normally one of the best elements. So he has been in the last two films, and we'll move on to his role in this film in a bit later because it's quite interesting what they've done with their kind of like relationship.
Yeah, definitely
on screen. So you had Shaun of the Dead, this great big hit, and then they followed it up in 2007 with, for my money, and I think you agree, Ben, a superior film, which was Hot Fuzz.
I love Hot Fuzz. I gotta say, I always liked Shaun of the Dead, but I never loved it. But Hot Fuzz is such a good movie. It's just so fucking funny, and it's so unique.
Absolutely. There's really nothing like it. So what it does is it takes this Simon Pegg's playing this like very elite.
He's like super cop, really, isn't he?
Cop,
he is the cop from all these American Hollywood blockbuster cop movies. He is like Will Smith in Bad Boys.
But because it's in England, and obviously, well, yeah, no, you're right. So he's kind of this super cop, and basically he's based in London, and eventually the rest of the police force said, we'll relocate you out, and basically it's because he's making everyone look bad because he's so good.
I love that. It's just like cops are so fucking corrupt.
It's brilliant.
Let's play the stat game. Yeah, but he gets relocated to like a sleepy country village in that.
Yeah,
just because he is making everyone look so shit because he's so good, and it's what's really good is it starts off as like he's just bored in this sleepy little town, and he gets paired up with Nick Frost's character Danny, who's like he's the police chief's son, but he's a bit of a simpleton, but he's obsessed with like Bad Boys 2. He's obsessed with like cop movies, and he wishes his life was like that.
And the whole thing is Simon Pegg saying no, police work is not like that. It's not going around shooting big guns and like going on crazy car chases. And basically, it does end. The last half an hour ends up like a Tony Scott.
Like Michael Bay style.
Oh yeah, more like Michael Bay, I guess. Yeah,
it's fucking crazy.
It's ridiculous.
Just the sheer volume of guns involved in it. But what's funny though is like the fighting kind of like these kind of elderly villagers who live in this kind of picturesque holiday town.
Absolutely, a very Middle England like polite kind of town, and the kind of the idea is the reason it's won the best village of the year each year is because they've killed off anyone who's caused any trouble, like this secret society of like the kind of
because there's like absolutely no crime in this village, but there's no murders or anything, but lots of people die through accidents. Yeah, it's got a ridiculous accident rate, and it's just a really good party, and I fucking loved it. I maybe liked it a bit more though because I maybe have more, maybe I'm more akin to knowing more and seeing more
action films,
cop films and more action films.
Absolutely, and the kind of buddy cop thing as well.
It's just such a good version of that and such a good send-up of it while being... It basically takes the piss out of these kind of Michael Bay cop movies while being a really good one at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's what's good about their films because they work both as parodies, even though they kind of shy away from that word. They work great as parodies, they work great as comedies, but they work great as like great horrors or great sci-fis or great action films on their own right.
And I think that comes a lot down to Edgar Wright, who's of the director and co-writer of a lot of these all of these films. He's the director of the Cornetto trilogy, and
absolutely,
he's such an energetic director. He's great, and I think that's been proved with Scott Pilgrim, which is his kind of first big feature away from the Cornetto trilogy, away from his kind of crew of friends, his guys, his group.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just shows how good a talent he is because, well, I mean, we're talking about them three as kind of like a unit. I mean, since they've moved to Hollywood and in the big leagues, they've gone off and done their own things.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, like Edgar Wright, Scott Pilgrim, he's even been brought in to do Ant-Man for Marvel.
That's been in the works for a while now.
Yeah, but it looks like it's finally kind of moving forward, and it'll be very interesting because let's face it, Ant-Man's a fucking weird superhero especially in modern kind of cinema climate. Definitely. And it'll be interesting to see what he does with it because I love Scott Pilgrim. I think it's actually one of my favorite movies.
I think it's great, Scott Pilgrim. I mean, and again, like we're talking about these three people moving away from each other. I don't think Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, they've done kind of cameo stuff here and there, and Simon Pegg's done some stuff with David Swimmer, and it's been all right. They've had nothing as good.
I think Simon Pegg does the best out of the three of them in terms of volume of work. I mean, he's in Star Trek. He's Scotty in Star Trek these days.
Yeah.
He's in the Mission Impossible movies now, since the third one. He's actually got a fair few big franchises under his belt.
Oh, absolutely. But it's kind of like in the British, like the comic life relief British character.
Yeah, you're right.
Which is no bad thing at all. But like Edgar Wright, I mean, I agree. I love Scott Pilgrim, and I'd go far to say Edgar Wright is a bit of an auteur, because although he's only really done 3 films and then of course the TV space, his style of filmmaking, I mean the kind of definition of an auteur is like you can see his style of filmmaking off a mile away,
and you definitely can. Even in Hot Fuzz, which isn't part of the Cornetto trilogy. Sorry, I completely balls that up. Even with Scott Pilgrim, which isn't a part of the Cornetto trilogy, it's got the same. He's got this like kind of style he does where he creates like quick cutting montages to transition between scenes, and and the thing is though, these quick cutting, ridiculously dramatic transitions are like on such mundane
very
things,
trivial
like
things.
like people putting seatbelts on and turning like the indicator on in a car, or people putting a jacket on and then zipping it up,
or it's tying their laces and stuff.
Yeah, and they're in all his movies, and they're just a really kind of dynamic thing that he does, and it's very much a signature, one of his signature moves that he puts on film.
Absolutely. He's almost got like a kind of like a manga like sensibility of like kind of Pokemon. Do you remember like all the crazy stuff that happened in Pokemon?
Yeah, I know what you're getting at. Yeah, where the people are kind of like on crazy backgrounds as they strike a pose and reel off his speed. He doesn't do anything like that, but I can kind of see he's got that similar style.
I mean, well, that's the thing. It's a very hard style to pin down. You kind of know what it is, but it's very hard to describe, and it's kind of like it's as much it's as much kind of influenced by comic books and like we're saying, like manga and stuff, as it is other like filmmakers and stuff, which is why it was so perfect for doing Scott Pilgrim, because it's based on a comic book and stuff. But so we're moving on to 2013, and this is the third of the trilogy. I mean, it didn't start as a trilogy, but like,
but there's a why not?
But what? Yeah, apparently they were just asked in interviews, like, "Oh, you're going to do a third one as a part of the trilogy?" And Edgar Wright said, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever." Like, just we're doing 3. We're definitely doing 3. And then he was like, "Actually, why the fuck not?"
Well, that's it. I mean, this is a trilogy in the loosest sense of the words. These are not films that are anywhere related to each other, and even the characters these people are playing are vastly different between films.
Well, I think there is a bit of a link between them.
Yeah, Cornettos,
and this is partly because of what I've heard in Sen's interviews. It's the link is kind of like male friendship, and kind of like not wanting to try not to grow up, trying to kind of like not wanting to face reality and kind of growing up, because obviously in the first film you've got Sean, who he needs to get his life on track and stop like hanging around and going to the pub and being like daft, and it's the idea he's entering his 30s and he needs to grow up. And then in Hot Fuzz, the whole thing is about Danny's Nick Frost's character is Danny, and how he's like a bit of a man-child, and if he should grow up and take responsibilities.
I always felt with Hot Fuzz it was more about that Angel, Simon Pegg's character, never had friends, and Danny was that friend he never had, and
I guess so. Yeah, no, I guess you're right there. Well, it's certainly all 3 of them are about male relationships and kind of very silly, the juvenile aspects of like a male relationship. That's how
And I got to say that this one is probably the darkest look at that type of
relationship
out of all of them.
Absolutely. It kind of really is the end. And they've said in interviews they wanted this one to really kind of like destroy all the other ones in the idea of like, we'll give you a bit of an idea of what it's about. It's a character called Gary King, who's played by Simon Pegg, and he tries to round up his old school friends from about 20 years ago to do this pub crawl in their home village, and it's
It's basically recreating their last day of school.
Yeah.
After the last day of school, they went out on this pub crawl trying to do 10 pubs off the belt. Which is called, is it the Golden Mile in their hometown, Newton Haven? And basically, they never make it all round the pubs for various reasons. And basically, Gary King, Simon Pegg's character, never has moved on from this night. And he tries to get, as you say, his school friends back round. So basically, he wants to relive that night of glory, but this time finish it.
Absolutely, and he's kind of in his head. It's like he needs to do this thing, and I mean, all his friends. This is 20 years on, and his personality at school was always. I mean, everyone knew these kind of people at school. They're really eccentric, larger than larger than life characters.
Yeah, he was the man about town. He was the cool guy. Yeah. He could get any woman he wanted. He was the coolest. Nobody could really compete with him. But when adulthood's finally struck, he's been left behind, and he just can't cope as an adult. where all of his friends, who were always kind of his group, have now moved on, got their own lives, and don't really give a shit anymore about what he likes and his kind of priorities, and he's been left behind, really.
And the interest, and this brings into the point I was saying before, because as I was saying, all the films have been about his relationship with Nick Frost, and in this one, it's a big role reversal, because in all the other ones, Simon Pegg's played the straight character, and in this one, it's completely different. Normally, Nick Frost is the one who's the comedy value, who's really funny, but in this one, he plays it completely straight as this middle-aged man who's just got a very checkered history with this guy for several reasons.
Well, yeah, when it kind of the film opens with this kind of flashback of them as kids and telling the story of this night when they went on the pub crawl they never finished, and it very much establishes that Nick Frost's character Andrew was he was Gary King's right hand man. They were the best buds, and he would have gone anywhere with them. But when the film goes to the adulthood, something's happened with them that has completely shattered their friendship.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's left hanging for much of the film, or why they're like this. Whereas everybody else, because you've got, the group really is, it consists of quite a good roundup of some really good actors. I mean, you've got Martin Freeman, first of all, as Oliver, who is kind of like, he's grown up to be a realtor, basically an estate agent for the wealthy in London. And you've also got Eddie Marsden. I fucking love Eddie Marsden. He's in so much, but he doesn't seem to get much recognition because
he's great, isn't he?
He is really good, but he plays Peter, who is kind of a bit like the shy, nerdy one of the group.
Yeah, he's the one in the group who everyone just kind of let tag, who was a canny guy, but everyone kind of. He was the guy who was probably happy to hang around with the cool kids, and they were kind of happy to. I mean, again, we've all had people like that in our friendship.
Oh yes. We're not going into too much detail, but I know what you're saying. He's the guy that no one he kind of just, as you say, tagged around. He was just happy to be there, and they were happy to have him around. But he wasn't any, he didn't really have much of an impact on them. And even in his adult life, he seems to have been he seems to just be the man in the background.
Absolutely.
He works for his father as a BMW salesman, and his wife pretty much runs his life, and he's very much just the kind of man in the background, the man fading into the background. But Eddie Marsden, I love Eddie Marsden because, as I say, I don't think he gets enough recognition, and he is in loads of stuff.
He's in loads of stuff. You always seem a great character actor.
Yeah, he really is, and he does films and TV. He just seems to be everywhere.
Yeah,
which is always good. But on top of this, you got Paddy Considine playing Stephen Prince. Even goddamn, I need to get glasses. Stephen Prince, who is basically when they were kids, he was the other cool kid who was Simon Pegg's character, like Gary King's rival.
Yeah,
except he managed to grow up and become a fully functioning adult. And he basically, he's still probably, I think out of when they're adults, he probably still could be considered the cool one because he's got a different kind of cool. He's a successful guy. He keeps making a thing of that. His wife left him, but he's now seen a 22-year-old yoga instructor. But he's the cool one who's maintained his kind of cool through adulthood.
Oh, absolutely.
And basically, as you say, Gary Well, it kind of alludes to that Gary's in a kind of support group, or even going further into kind of, he's like under care, medical care.
Yeah, well, there's kind of shots where when he's kind of getting ready and he's in this room, it seems like he's almost in kind of rehab or something.
Yeah, it's like a kind of halfway house type of thing. And the opening, which tells the story of the failed pub crawl, is him telling the story to a kind of support group.
I tell you what, you know the guy who's talking to him at the support group. Was it just me, or was that Ben? What's his name? Ben. Who's that guy? From Q, from the new Q.
It might have been. I don't know though. I can't see him on the cast list.
Yeah, well, neither can I. Just like it just sounded a bit like him. And you only see the back of his head. I just thought it would be it's the kind of cameo that they do, because the thing about these films is, and this is another. This shows you how well loved they are. You've got loads of cameos from very famous actors doing the briefest parts. You know what I mean? And you can tell that they're probably all just favors because these big fans, these big actors are big fans. You know what I mean?
Well, that's it. You get a lot of people in the cast. So that's Ben Whishaw, by the way.
Yeah,
and I don't think he is in it by the looks of it. At least if he is, he's not credited.
He's not credited.
Interesting fact, actually, he's come out as gay the other day.
He has, yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah. Which is, you know what? It's nice when people feel that they can.
Absolutely.
You know what? It really irritates me that people in this day and age still feel like it's a big deal. Like it shouldn't be a big deal, but that's a whole other kettle of fish. So yeah, I mean, basically, the story is that these friends get back together, and the friends all meet just before they meet Simon Pegg's character, and they're all like, "Why are we here? You know, he's a nightmare. He's an absolute disaster. He's done some really fucked up things in the past. Why all here? Well, it's probably because most of them feel sorry for him in some kind of way. And it's basically them trying to relive the Golden Mile. And really, it's only Gary who's excited about it. The rest are kind of just going through the motions, barely putting up with it. And when they get back to Newton Haven, their hometown, things are very odd, to say the least.
You just get the feeling that, like, everything seems a bit too normal, and there's also kind of, this is where a bit of the satire comes in, because they're going to these pubs and they've got these memories of being very kind of lovable pubs with their own personalities, but they're going to these pubs and it's literally exactly the same. And
oh my god, I fucking love that, because
was so funny.
It's the first one they go into, and it's like, oh shit, it's been taken over by a chain. Oh well, then let's go to the next one, and then they walk in, and it's exactly the same fucking room.
Yeah,
I just fucking burst out laughing there.
It's that kind of shot where it goes pans slowly across the room. It's exactly the same.
It's just got like a different logo above the bar, and that's it. It was absolutely great. Yeah, there's some great kind of pub humour in this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's this bit where Simon Pegg's character goes to the bar and he's like, "Okay, so what ales do you have?" And he's like, "Oh, we've got beer." And he's like, "Oh, right, what's the code?" And then he's like, "So, what is it? Is it fruity? Is it nutty? Is it hoppy?" And he's just like, "It's beer."
I know, and we've only got the one. So, do you want some?
Yep.
Oh well, yes. Well, I've 6.
So anyway, they're going through the town, and it's just them kind of like the first half's them just kind of bantering and reminiscing over the kind of little kind of like misadventures they used to get up with, and then it gets to a point where they have a bit of basically Nick Frost's character says, I'm going to call it a night. I don't think this is a good idea. And it all starts to kind of peter out, the kind of excitement for the night about third or fourth pub in. And Simon Pegg's character just goes to the toilet like in a bit of a huff, and he starts chatting to like some youth there, and he's kind of,
yeah, he's trying to like get down with the kids.
Yeah, saying
one thing about Simon Pegg in this film, he was so cringeworthy.
Yeah.
In that you could see that he was just this desperate, sad, middle-aged bastard who was desperately trying to cling on to his youth and was just not doing a very good job of it. It's just like I just sitting there going, God damn, there's really nothing sadder than this kind of person.
Absolutely. It was cringe, really. It's like it is like the. I mean, everyone's kind of met people like that who don't
definitely
really want to kind of.
It's like where school was the peak.
Yeah,
and
the peak of their kind of popularity and their kind of like their their respect and what have you.
Yeah.
But the point of the thing is, at that point, he's attacked by this kid, and he gets in a fight, and he ends up decapitating him.
It happens. It's a Friday night.
It happens, only to find out they're not human.
No, they're
They're
not
robots.
Hey, they're not robots.
Oh no,
robot means slave.
Yeah.
These are something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically the blanks. That's what they're called. But basically, yeah, there's this giant conspiracy to do with kind of people. It's kind of like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah, and a bit of like what's that, Soylent Green? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah,
stuff?
yeah, Soylent Green, yeah.
Soylent Green. Yeah, it's got that kind of like Philip K. Dick-esque satire about planet Earth hasn't been it's been invaded, but in a subtle way where they're kind of taking over people, and if they resist, they're getting turned into these kind of like clone robot things.
Because not everybody in this town is a robot. There's still people, but they don't like resistance, and they'll get rid of you if.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's basically about that. So from that point on, it kind of explodes from this kind of slightly dramatic, witty pub banter movie to this really kind of bombastic sci-fi thriller.
Absolutely, and they've convinced themselves, instead of just running the hell away, what they should do is carry on the pub crawl.
That's another thing I loved about this, is like just the way they convince themselves that if they carry on with the pub crawl, it'll look like they're being normal, and thus the robots, the blanks, won't think they're up to anything.
So they've literally got to go to each pub, down at least one drink, and then head to the next one.
But
and
what I loved about it, though, is that when they're trying to decide on what to do, it was just brilliant because it was such drunk logic.
Yeah.
I mean, like, only drunk people would come up with such a plan.
Absolutely, which is where a lot of the comedy comes into it, because you've got to, as they're going on with this, they're getting more and more wrecked. So, they're getting in more and more of a state, and it just leads to some very funny... just very funny moments and stuff. And
it's great. And what I liked as well is, and it happens in real life as well, as the film goes on, and as they get drunker, they become more friendly with each other.
Yeah.
In terms of the banter flowing and old jokes from their childhood coming back into it. And I thought, this is exactly what fucking happens when you go out with friends you haven't seen for ages. You kind of slip back into a rhythm as the drink starts flowing.
Absolutely, yeah. It might be a bit awkward at first, but as soon as we've got a few pints, the gags come back.
That's it. It's just like old times.
Yeah.
But other than the central cast, though, you've also got a lot of supporting actors. These Cornetto movies always have a big kind of big tier cast in that side characters. So you got like David Bradley coming back. Has he been in every?
He seems to be popping up so much recently, everywhere I turn. I mean, obviously, Walder Frey.
Yeah, Walder Frey, man. What I loved about this, though, is, and I said this in the podcast we did the other day, that, Walder Frey, you can't trust that motherfucker at all. But in here, he is...
It's the one character you can trust.
Yeah, he's Basil, the local nutter, who basically noticed this kind of alien invasion as soon as it started, because he is so kind of paranoid, and he's one of the few people left resisting.
Yeah.
And I really liked him in this. I always like David Bradley. He's one of these guys who's been around for so many years, and he's just he's a bit like Eddie Marsden in that respect.
Oh, absolutely.
In that he's just a great character actor that ticks on by.
Yeah, he is, and he seems to be someone who can, like, I don't know. I mean, he's obviously better than what he's given credit for, I think, because he does a lot of really small parts. Like in the Harry Potter film, it's a really kind of small comic role, but I think he is a really good serious actor when he gets...
Oh, yeah, definitely. He was in that series that was on years ago with Daniel Craig, Our Friends in the North.
Yeah, you know what? I was watching it the other night.
Yeah, it's good, man. I think his storyline intersected with Christopher Eccleston's storyline. Something I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's something about the politics of the North.
Yeah, no. He was in Ideal as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was this fucking psychotic drug dealer that used to make Johnny Vegas' life hell. really fucking bizarre part for him to take.
Yeah.
But he's in tons of stuff, and obviously he's in Game of Thrones.
I mean, he's just great. He's really good.
He is good. He's in Harry Brown as well with
Of course,
Michael Caine.
It's the guy who's killed.
Yeah, it's Michael Caine's friend who gets killed and sparks off the whole vigilante thing. He's great. But on top of him, you've got like fucking Pierce Brosnan.
Well, yeah, which is interesting because in the last film they had a fellow 007. They had oh god, my mind's gone blank.
Timothy Dalton.
Timothy Dalton, of course. And I think Pierce Brosnan is really good in this kind of like that English teacher at school who
like the hey teach kind of one.
Yeah, the hey teach guy who'd probably have the odd joint with the sixth formers like at his house and that. Or something. But I mean, he was great in it.
Yeah, he wasn't in it a huge amount, but I really did like him. He was fun. Yeah, as you're right. You're right. He is the kind of cool teacher. And when they meet him again, he's like he starts talking to them as if they're students again.
Yeah.
He's like, boys, why don't you come sit down? I'll tell you who else was in this. Rosamund Pike, who was actually a Brosnan Bond girl.
Yes.
In Die Another Day.
Yes.
Not the most fondly remembered Bond film, but...
No. And the thing, and this is a point about these films, the Cornetto trilogy, for as good as they are, the female characters, it's about the guys really, and the female characters are just kind of, I mean, they're not badly written characters, but they're very basic love interest characters.
Yes.
That don't really have much to do, which is in some ways a bit of a shame because Space, which is, like I say, the thing they all started in, was co-written by Jessica Hines.
Yes, she played. Am I right in thinking she played Daisy?
Yeah, and so she kind of like wrote a lot of the female characters are much more well-rounded. But I think saying they don't have that kind of female influence in the writing stage, that doesn't come through. Or maybe they want to focus on the male characters.
Yeah. Because
as we were saying before, these three films are about friendship and like male friendship.
The male friendship in particular. I mean, Rosamund Pike in here is Sam, who she's basically Martin Freeman's character's sister, who Gary used to shag when they were teenagers. But Paddy Constantine, his character, Stephen, always had a thing for her, but they just never got together. And it's about, like, basically, now that they're adults, Simon Pegg and Paddy Constantine trying to recompete for her affections.
Mm-hmm. That rivalry's come back.
Yeah.
Which is,
it's not quite as much of a big rivalry as it once was in the current playing field.
I think they've got bigger fish to fry.
Yeah, just a bit. But you're right. Rosamund Pike really is in there to get that rivalry re-sparked and give them something to talk about and work through in that regards. She's not bad by any stretch of imagination. I like her. But you're right. She is probably a bit more underwritten than the rest of the characters. Really.
Yeah, I mean, she's good. She probably gives the character more depth than it was. Than it was written. Although saying that the lass who plays Simon Pegg's girlfriend in Shaun of the Dead was really good as well, actually.
I can't remember what the hell she's called off the top of my head. But I know who you mean. Who played Liz, his girlfriend, his long suffering girlfriend? I'm just trying to find out. Actually, it was Kate Ashfield.
Right.
Good
old Kate Ashfield.
Good old. You know what? Honestly, I have not seen her in much since. I don't think.
I'm sure she was in an Arctic Monkeys video.
All right.
There you go.
What more do you want?
Exactly. So anyway, so they're trying to finish the end of the Golden Mile.
Yeah.
And they're facing all these blanks. I think they end up calling them the robot things.
Yes, because you can't call them robots because robot means slave and these aren't slaves. And our friend Mr. Reece Shearsmith turns up to remind us of that.
Yeah. Which, I mean, as much as I like seeing his face, I thought they were going to do something a bit more like creepy and interesting with his character because I'm used to seeing him playing such dark roles.
Yes, he can go dark when he wants to. He must be friends with these guys because he has a brief appearance in Shaun of the Dead as well when they meet the other group.
Well, he's in a couple of episodes of Space.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah, he plays Nick Frost's character's rival, basically.
Man, I think that I've not seen much of Space, but that sounds fucking amazing.
It's a great episode. It's basically Simon Pegg and Nick Frost are entering Robot Wars, and he's he's got the rival of robots.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to get spaced on. I hope it's on Netflix or something, because Channel 4 put a lot of stuff up on there at the moment. So I'm gonna have to sit down and watch it.
Oh man, absolutely, it's great stuff, Space. So as they're going on, they're getting into these situations, and there's some really fucking good choreographed fight scenes, I thought.
Yeah, there's some really inventive fight scenes.
Absolutely.
You've got like, I thought there's just a lot of kind of variation in the scenes. Like you start off, we see in all the identical pubs, but as they go on, all the pubs start to get more and more varied and
yeah,
different.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's like 1 minute they're in a proper bar, and the next they end up at one point going to kind of a school disco reunion.
Oh man, that was so good.
Which is kind of like, oh, what's that? It's that, I can't remember what it's called, but it's that Greek place which is like in limbo, and you kind of get stuck there. I don't know what it's called. Like, I don't know. Do you know your Greek mythology?
The only thing I can think of is Hades.
Is it Hades maybe, where it's like you're tempted to stay and kind
Purgatory.
of like, yeah. So it's kind of like, well, they end up there and they get kind of seduced by
by the marmalade sandwich. Is it Is it the marmalade or the Marmite sandwich?
I think it's marmalade.
Marmalade, yeah. There's the red head.
Yeah.
In the two blondes, but they're like the hot girls from their school days who are still like look like they're 18 for some bizarre reason, some mysterious reason that they seem to forget about very fucking quickly.
Well, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Actually, I mean, Christ Almighty, when one of them starts sucking on Nick Frost's finger and sucks his wedding ring right off, I was like, damn, man.
I know. I was like,
send me to Newton Haven. But yeah, come back to the fight scenes. There's some inventive fight scenes. I mean, you've got the bit where there's one of the blanks is strapped like legs instead of legs instead of arms, and it's like swinging them round, and
absolutely,
they're just having a huge fucking fight with this thing, and there's a huge brawl in a pub where
are you on about the one just after they've been talking to Pierce Brosnan?
Yeah,
and Nick gets two bastards on his hands.
It's like wearing them as boxing gloves, just smashing these things to bits.
That fight scene's incredible. I mean, I've seen the film twice now, and second time I saw that fight scene, I just realised it's all one long trapping shot.
Yeah, it's really well choreographed.
It's not. I mean, the camera doesn't cut. It's just one long cut, and it follows the different characters fine, and then it will turn around. It's almost like the camera is someone in the middle of that watching it all. There's no
dynamic.
cuts, and it's like that's really fucking hard to get your head around.
It takes a lot of work to do like big, long, continuous shots.
Yeah, and also, like we say, they're more than a bit tipsy, these lads. So it's so funny when Simon Pegg's just trying to finish his pipe between like punches, and it's getting spilt everywhere.
Oh god, that's so fucking funny. And he keeps getting knocked from behind.
And
then, there's just loads of little humour in this. And what as funny as these films are, and the Cornetto trilogies are, I think they always have a good bit of drama to them. And I think this one especially has a lot of drama to it, because, especially towards the end, between Nick Frost and Simon Pegg, there's some pretty serious, pretty dark drama going on between them, and about how Gary King, Simon Pegg's character, is just completely
disinfatuated and disillusioned. It's like there's that speech at the very end where like he just goes on about that, like when they left school, and I think it was kind of like a school sixth form that they're on about, and he has that speech when he says we were promised, all we had were promises when we'd leave, and they were all lies, and nothing happened. I had all these, like, my life just didn't start, and like that kind of thing rings true in this climate, especially.
There's plenty of people like that. And I just thought it was really good. And I thought Simon Pegg and Nick Frost worked really well.
Absolutely,
together in the part.
yeah. I mean, the very in the pub, the World's End, because basically everyone starts getting killed off, and it's just them to get the kind of the fight scene between them, and the kind of like it gets pretty emotional.
Oh yeah, it's got a real big emotional climax. It's great. I thought this film was great. I liked it just as much as Hot Fuzz, and I don't think it's quite as light-hearted as Hot Fuzz.
Yeah.
I think it's more, it borders on more serious than that. I think it's very different to both Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead in terms of content and the storyline and the way the characters are, but it still carries that kind of Edgar Wright cinematic style.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, which is so. I mean, I've heard quite a lot of backlash to this. A lot of people didn't like it, which is it's fine. But like, I mean, it's like you say, it's weird because in one sense they've done very similar films in the kind of direction, style, and the humour, because they've got a very distinctive humour. This, but like, and the fact they're all you could class as comedy parodies of like a zombie film, a horror, and then an action film, and then a sci-fi. It's kind of like pastes on what I seem are quite, or used to be seen as quite like trashy film genres.
Yeah.
So there are some in that respect, but they're very different films.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They're very different films. And I think maybe that's why there has been some backlash to this one. I mean, this isn't Hot Fuzz Part 2 in a pub. This is a very different film that carries a similar style, but it's different characters, a different storyline, and a different themes and a different feel to it. But having said that, I was kind of glad. It's quite brave to go out and do something a bit different.
Definitely.
So you're not resting on your laurels. You are doing something different because you want to do something different. And I think the guys here have shown that they're very much capable of doing something different while maintaining their overall quality. I mean, really, what rating would you give this movie?
Man, it's those. How are we doing ratings again? It's A's and B's and stuff.
A's and B's, but if you absolutely love the film, you can give it a gold star, which is like amazing. You'd go out and buy it and see it like 6 times.
You know what? It's weird. I would give it an A, but I don't know why I'm not quite giving it a gold star. Maybe it'll grow me more, but maybe I'm really holding out for like.
You know what? I kind of do that a little bit as well.
Because in all rights, I should give this a star. Because the thing is, there's nothing like this. Nobody's taken that storyline. It's such a kind of like a ridiculous concept for film. And if you saw it on paper, you'd think, "Fucking hell, that's such a terrible idea."
Yeah,
but
it looks a fucking mess. But
as soon as you see their 3 names beside it, you kind of think I think they're the only filmmakers who could pull this off successfully.
Yeah, at least with how they've done it here, it works very well. I'd be hard pushed to see, just think off the top of my head at least, who else could have done something like this. Because it is so quirky and it's in just the concept of it. It does fit with their style, and I really like it. But so you kind of going for an A?
I'm going to go for an A.
Well, I got to agree with you. I thought this was a really, really good movie, very funny. There was good characters and and really well acted drama. I was surprised by that. Actually, it did take me from a kind of left field. I expected it just to be kind of more silliness, really, like Hot Fuzz was. I'm not saying Hot Fuzz was devoid of a bit of drama, because it was, but nothing on the kind of the depth of this or so at the core of it. But having said that, I can see why people might not like this as much. It's very different, and I can see why some of the backlash comes.
Well, I mean,
that. But
I think one of the risks they've taken is making the main character, the Gary King Simon Pegg character, very unlikable and kind of like
cringeworthy, really.
Cringeworthy, but like it's the fact that everyone else agrees with the audience.
Yes,
that's where the comedy comes. I think.
That's it. The only person who can't see it is Gary himself.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know if it's that he can't see it. It's just that he doesn't know how to be any different.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got to say, I kind of agree with you. I think this film's an easy A. It was very, very much well worth the price of admission. I would happily go and see it again, and apparently you just have. I didn't realise you'd actually seen it more than once. But
my mum and brother wanted to go.
Anyway, well, you can't argue with that. But yeah, I think any film that's you definitely want to see more than once is at the cinema at least, could quite happily be an A. So I think that's a fair rating.
Yeah.
It's a shame that the Cornetto trilogy is over, because does that mean that we're not getting any more movies from these guys?
Well,
or does it just give them space to breathe and do something else?
Well, I mean, I don't. They work too good together, not to, I'd say, but I think
we're going to get the Cornetto saga.
Well, we can hope so. It's like a Star Wars thing, and
this is the first trilogy.
Yeah,
we're doing the prequel trilogies next.
So, they've said in interviews it's tying up the kind of the ideas of male bonding and male friendship, which is and like two very close male friends, and what's life and how life forces them to kind of like, you know, move apart and what have you, and stuff like that. I mean, from what interviews I've read surrounding the film, they've said, you know, it's the idea of not wanting to grow up and kind of male friendship.
No,
and if they would do something, it probably wouldn't have Simon Pegg and Nick Frost as the two main characters and playing best friends, or this one, ex-best friends or whatever. But yeah, I'd love. I mean, they haven't done it. They haven't put a foot wrong so far. So so I'd love to see if they can make something else.
Yeah, no, it'd be interesting to see if they'll leave this a trilogy, because as you were saying, this wasn't meant to be a trilogy, it just kind of happened, so will they go beyond that? I don't know. But The World's End, anyway, is a great finish to the Cornetto trilogy, and I gotta say, great use of Cornetto in this one.
Yes, do you know what? I forgot about it.
I did,
I
actually.
completely forgot. So I was looking out for it early on, and then I was swept away, and then and you know what? People were kind of like annoyed at that. They were saying, "Oh, he wasn't eating a cornetto."
Oh, come on,
like,
man!
You're fucking kidding me.
Given the circumstances,
yeah,
I think it was fairly. I think it was fairly okay for him not to be eating a cornetto.
Absolutely.
Oh man, that's just people splitting hairs.
Definitely, it's kind of ridiculous. But yeah, if you love their kind of humor, I think you'd love it. I think most people would like it. It's a very good film. It shows you how much they've kind of how their status has risen so much, because Shaun of the Dead was such a low budget film, and Hot Fuzz had a much bigger budget, but this it uses the money it was given. It's epic.
Oh yeah, definitely. You can tell it's got some really big scale scenes, and yeah, it's just a great movie. I think it's one that we can definitely recommend.
The only way to survive the night is to make it all the way to the world's end.
Where are the others?
They're blending in.
Hello, I am a robot.
We're just 5 friends on a night out, having a good time.
The world's end.
What the hell is that? We are going to get to the world's end if it kills us.
Oh no.
Doomsday.